Hey guys, Dave from Nerducky for Nerds by Nerds, and today I got a couple of nerds with me. We got a new guest, Andrew, in the house, as well as Chris from Nord Games. How you gentlemen doing today?
Doing very, very well.
And
Yeah, I'm a little tired, a little jet lagged. Just got back from North Texas RPG convention, and anybody who's ever been there knows that Saturday night is the party night. So I was partying with Stefan Picorni over at Dwarven Forge after his game. It was a lot of fun, but I'm tuckered now because waking up Sunday morning, getting ready, getting on the flight, and then making an hour and a half journey home after the airport. I'm tuckered, so I didn't get home till late. Got some good rest. Now I'm back at it. So we're doing good, even though we got the jet lag.
No rest for the wicked.
yeah, so we had people show up a little bit early because there was a bit of a scheduling flub when I had posted up scheduled the live chat last night. I had forgot to change the date, so it was like for yesterday, and a bunch of people had showed up. Hey, this is weird. You don't usually do this on Sundays,
Oh,
then Doug
we
told
did it.
me there was like 10 people waiting for the live chat for tomorrow, and I was like, that sounds weird. Let me go over there and take a look. I'm like, oh, that's why.
Whoops.
And one of our regulars is
Yeah.
like, I woke up in the middle of the night thinking I missed half a day.
Oh no! I thought it was the 11th, right? It's the 11th.
Yeah, no, yeah. It is the
Okay,
11th.
cool.
It was just, and also sometimes when I schedule things through the live chat, it will change it like randomly to like roll it back a day or move it forward or move the time.
Oh,
So
boy.
you always have to remember to double check, and I'm not always that great at
Okay.
that stuff.
Okay.
Whoops.
I'm not totally accustomed to what the program we're using. I usually use Google Hangouts, so I don't see any questions. Should I go to the
Oh yeah,
actual
that you won't
YouTube?
get them in here. They're gonna be on the actual watch
Okay.
page.
All right, let me go to the watch page then.
So in the
Oh,
meantime,
can pop
you
the
guys have
chat
a
out.
kick.
Nice.
Yeah, you can pop it out. It makes it really easy. In the meantime, you guys have a Kickstarter going on for Spectacular Settlements.
That's
So-
correct.
Yes.
So what
I
what
think
is
we're at
that all about?
42,000.
Oh yeah, you guys are killing it.
Well, yeah, it's by far our most funded if you consider speed. So we funded
Fastest-
it in
Most.
fastest funded. So we funded $10,000 in 3 hours, and then we've been pretty consistent. Obviously, most Kickstarters go through this, massive funding in the beginning, less during the middle, and then it spikes up again in the end. Right now, we're in the middle, so we usually call it the doldrums. But we're still maintaining a nice average every single day. A lot of new backers jumping on because a lot of our people share it with their friends. And of course, we're doing a lot of advertising. Obviously, we're on shows like Nerdarchy to promote it. But the gist of the project itself is it is a book. It started out at about 250 pages. It is currently, by our estimations, going to be about 380.
It's
So-
ballooned a bit.
Yeah, it will be more expensive after the Kickstarter than it is currently. So if you pledge at $40, you're getting probably what we would consider to be a $50 to $60 book for $40. And so, that's also a good value to jump in now. And it's grown because of the stretch goals. And the stretch goals have been accomplished by the backers. So, and these include additional content. We've put through 3 new chapters in, and we've been adding more pre-generated examples of settlements. So that if you simply like what you see, you can just drop that one right into your world and you're good to go. It's got all the details already fleshed out. Or you can use the settlement creator. So you go to let's say the village chapter and just start rolling dice and creating an interesting dynamic village. So you can do it on your own. And then additional NPCs. We'll add some to the page count and artwork and stuff. So we're estimating over 350 pages at this point in time.
Yeah.
But at its core, it's a way that people can build or drop in incredible settlements and or spectacular settlements into their their worlds, and they'll have some interesting jumping off points for role play and stuff. A lot more interesting than just there's a settlement and it's a place for you to spend the night or get some provisions or whatever, and then you're on your way. You can actually have quite a lot of interesting storytelling and role play, and potentially encounters, urban encounters and stuff happen right there in the settlement.
I remember from AD&D, and it was actually probably one of the more influential books that I've encountered in gaming, and it was the world building book. And it was soft paper or soft back. It was only like yay thick, and since that, I don't know if there's been many things put out officially by Wizards of the Coast along that vein. So would that prompted settlements, towns, villages? It would prompt you guys to write in this direction for this project.
Oh, what prompted it? As with everything, we design things that we want to use in our own games.
A lot of brainstorming.
And save some time for ourselves. But oftentimes, I'll be thinking, I want a settlement, and it has these few features. But I on the fly, I don't remember all the other features that I wanted to put in there. So it's kind of a culmination of all the various notes that I've taken over time. You'll be preparing for a game, or in my case, I had 3 hours sitting on a plane, and I was thinking about all the games that I was going to be running over the weekend at the convention. So I'm going, okay, what do I want out of this game? And when I start looking back at my notes and realizing, oh, I want to know what sort of law enforcement is going to be in a particular settlement, or I want to know the quirks of an NPC that's going to be in a settlement. There's so many moving parts. It's a lot easier to have some thing, a piece of the game master's toolbox is what it turned into being, something that I can reference that reminds me, oh yeah, remember to include this, remember to include that, if it makes sense for the story. Obviously leave it if it doesn't, if it's going to be too much. But all these various moving parts, if you have a book that contains them all and presents them to you in some sort of a structure, now all of a sudden it's a lot easier to generate that settlement and make it a whole lot more interesting or more real. Obviously, we're in our heads with all this stuff, but when you have those details and the players ask a question and you have an answer for that, the world becomes so much more interesting.
Yeah.
So
what's in this book? 350 pages, a lot of pages to cover, pretty much, and it's just like towns and villages, right? It's not even like world building per se. It's kind of focused.
Well, it's I'll touch on something, then I'll hand it over to Andrew. This one is not about world building. It is about populating the world with settlements. We have a whole other thing going on with world building, which we can touch on if you want to, but toward the end. But essentially, you've got three categories. You've got the settlements themselves. You've got the shops or points of interest. Could be churches or taverns or something like that. So points of interest within the settlements, and then you've got the NPCs. All three huge topics covered in this book. Go ahead, Andrew.
It's filled with you've got, thanks to our stretch goals, we've got 8 major chapters, as well as the NPCs and that. But the primary chapters are trading posts, villages, towns, cities, capitals, keeps, castles, and strongholds. And within each of those chapters, you have essentially tons of tables that you can either choose things from or roll on right in order. And each chapter takes you through in steps. So you've got the basics of whatever the settlement is, be it a trading post all the way through a capital. That will cover...
Let me clarify something real quick. Let me clarify. Each chapter starts with a builder pertinent to that chapter. Right. So the builder for the trading post is going to have different content in the trading post than the builder for the capital. So
Correct.
it's going to have different content.
But you get into in the basics, it'll be things like its age, its size, a little bit about its recent history, like a potential event that has happened within the past, say, perhaps 5 years. Then you get into things about the community, anything from the demographics. So you'll have a table that'll give you the different races that make up the settlement. And we did it in such a way where it's still agnostic depending on what the GM is trying to do in their world. If they decide that they want to place the settlement in a place that has dwarves, humans, and gnomes, they aren't necessarily forced into using other races. We instead make the table a percentage-based thing. So depending on what you get, you might say it's 100% a single race, or distributed different percentages between certain races. So it gives guidance for what you can do with it, but it doesn't force the GM to do something that they might not otherwise do. So you have that, and then the third step in the chapter would be for the points of interest, like shops and services that the settlement could offer, and how those would be distributed as well. So you've got tons of options for a myriad of different settlement types.
And I'm pretty sure no one from Nord is going to show up at your house if you ignore your rolls and just pick from the charts,
Yes,
or use them for inspiration.
We explicitly state in the book you can choose, or you can roll on the tables. That's for sure.
Although
but we have found that rolling on the tables is the most fun, because it generally, you'll get at least two things that kind of seem to conflict with one another, or you might go, how could those two things possibly exist in the same place? But then those questions prompt you to ask, okay, what is this settlement and what makes it special, and how can I as a GM get creative and make this a unique place? What explanations can I come up with? So the book does the heavy lifting of figuring out the details. Then you as the GM get the creative challenge to turn this into something unique that makes it your own.
And it doesn't take very long either. That's one of the other great things. And it can be a collaborative thing.
It's a lot of fun.
The three of us got together one time, and myself and Chris Wolf were in one room, and Andrew was on Hangout, and I just started rolling some dice, and we were all coming up with our own interpretations of what that actually meant. You know, what is this? What are these two combinations? Are these three factors? How did that play together? What does that mean? And inevitably, Chris Wolf is always like, you know, it's an evil cult, and there's necromancers and stuff like that.
It's always
and then,
an evil cult with necromancers.
Yeah, with him, it's always an evil cult. But I tended to lean toward there was some sort of technology or something like that, and there's a few different ways that you can go with it, and it turned into a really cool trading post with gnomes working on basically blimp technology, and they had all these different. It was called Skyport. Eventually, is what we called it, and you had all these different platforms up in the trees, and that's where they had their blimps, and then they would have those blimps transport. That was one of the factors. Was they did transportation. I think it was a unique transportation methods. And the reason we state it like that is unique transportation methods could mean a lot of things. That could mean smuggling of illegal goods. It could be that it's all dwarves, they transport everything underground. That's unique. In this case, I thought, well, what if they transport everything via the sky? Well, how do they do that? Are they have giant eagles, or do they have some other mode of transportation? I thought, well, how about big blimps? And that's how they do it. And then another factor had to do with something that they had some sort of a commodity, like a good that they produced. And I determined that there was an alchemist in town who produces a lighter than air gas in potion form. So they had this ability to fill the blimps with this lighter than air gas, and that's how they were able to do it. And that is a pretty unique settlement. Besides all the other factors that went into it, and the general wealth and condition of the place, just those few factors really defined this place as an interesting place to go. If you wanted to transport something in a different method, or let's say you wanted to get to somewhere where the highest peaks that are impossible to get to without some sort of air travel, so you need to get a griffin or a giant eagle, or in this case a blimp to take you there. So that's just an example of how things that the three of our minds went in different directions. But then once I tapped into that, then all three of us were on board with this. Oh yeah, so it's a gnome society, and they have all these blimps and this special technology. Oh, and by the way, the whole thing where it says they have a really tight security, yeah, that would make sense. They'd want to protect this technology. So all the factors played in together quite nicely.
It's never a happy, fun cult. It's always an evil
No,
cult.
it's although that
would be a twist.
Now that makes me want to look for an opportunity to squeeze in a happy-go-lucky cult.
They're all like Stepford Wives, and
yeah, they're just
Well, yeah, okay. Well, a cult doesn't need to be necessarily evil. There could be a cult of, a group that is very much happy and stoked and super accepting of everybody, and not usually the word cult has a bad meaning, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. James has a question.
There's actually a couple questions.
Okay, go ahead. You do your thing.
Okay. The Mighty Hobbs wants to know the product settlement generation based on real world medieval demographics.
So we're focused on the medieval or fantasy theme, and when you mean demographics, I think what we're talking about is like the races, correct?
Yeah. Population.
Okay, so we have your typical fantasy races and stuff in there, and so the NPCs and stuff are going to have the various races we're all accustomed to in fantasy. But when it comes to the actual demographics portion of the rollable tables, it leaves it vague enough to where it's not going to tell you have 50% dwarves and 25% humans and that kind of thing. It presents it in more like your primary race. Yeah, go ahead.
I can actually read off the table. I've got it right in front of me.
I think he's looking for more like population totals. Like, this is a settlement of X size, would have X amount of people. This is a city.
Oh, I gotcha. Well, at this point, what do we have for the trading post? That's the only one we're sharing right now with anybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
The information.
And then I guess
everything else is still very much, the trading post is the one that's pretty much locked down at this point. The playtest material for that will come out within the next few days. For everybody who's interested, there's going to be an update on the Kickstarter for how to access the playtest material. But the rest of the ones, like the cities and capitals, will have thousands of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the thing he really wants to know too is like, where are you guys pulling those numbers from? Did you do historical research and be like, this would be about right in a medieval campaign setting?
Yeah, we have done some
little bit
research, and then some of it is just from a gut feeling, as well as from a game design perspective, trying to keep in mind, like, we don't want to bog down the GM with like a needless amount of information. We want to keep it usable. So, sometimes there might be a bit of a hand wave, and your population might fall within this kind of space. But we were looking at like trading posts would be from from 2-digit to maybe about 100 people who are actual residents who stay at the trading post. But cities can get up to 100,000, sometimes even like maybe 200,000 or 300,000 people for capital cities like I think London and Paris in the Middle Ages got up around those kind of numbers. But a capital city that scale was a rarity. So yeah, we also tried to do a bit of both.
Yeah, and we talk about the size, and when we talk about size, we're talking about the number of structures, permanent structures, and then it can go into what sort of like camps have been created outside the city walls and that kind of thing too. Right. So those are other factors to just keep in mind. Like there might be the main part of the city where you have the majority of the population, then you have slums and stuff, then you have the camps outside the walls, and just different quarters and stuff when we're talking about cities. Talking about trading posts, it's a bit easier because we're envisioning these things as much smaller points along the road that are stops for regulars, travelers and stuff. So your visitor population might even be more than your resident population. And then, of course, it has a lot to do with the number of permanent structures, the number of service establishments like inns and taverns and stuff like that. How many people are actually there at any given time?
Right.
So
good question, though.
And then moving on to James's question, I think this is the one you're going to pick out. The book sounds like it helps make a lot of the basics of the town, but does it give a guide points for creating vital NPCs for a town or plot quest anchors?
Yes. So you have the section on how to build the settlements or the examples on the settlements, and that's actually that consists of 8 chapters. And then the chapter after that, I think we're currently at chapter 10, because the first chapter is the
intro,
abstract and the instructions. Yeah, the intro. Chapters 2 through 9 are each one of those settlements, how to build them, and then examples of each settlement. And then chapter 10 would be shops, points of interest, shops, service establishments, and miscellaneous. Miscellaneous being museums, libraries, stuff like that. And then the chapter after that is the interesting NPCs. So they all work with each other, where you're building a settlement and you refer to the chapter on shops to then populate that settlement with shops. We'll give examples of pre-built shops in there. Then you're populating those shops with a proprietor or patrons, let's say, out of the interesting NPCs chapter. Additionally, members of the interesting NPCs can be pulled out and put onto the streets and stuff too. There'll be things like jesters and lamplighters and other miscellaneous NPCs that are not proprietors, pickpockets, thieves, that kind of thing, that can be put on the streets. And these are the interesting NPCs, not all the NPCs. There's going to be a lot of NPCs. Think about when you're walking down the street. There's an awful lot of people that they just blend into the background. But there's other people that stand out for some reason. A police officer, or a firefighter, or the various people that then become a person of interest all of a sudden for you. So that's how the book is designed to function. Is we don't try to fill in all the blanks in each one of the chapters. We refer to the other chapters so that the book does not balloon into a 2,000-page tome. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Yeah, right now there's 100 NPCs, and there'll be about 124. I think we have 24 additional NPCs will be added, or it's 20 or something like that at a stretch goal.
Yeah, at 1,000 pages
I don't
plus.
want to get much more than that.
At 1,000 pages plus, you start infringing upon the domain and territory of the Frog.
Oh yeah, the Frog God. They're the ones who put out the huge books. So we're gonna stick to 400 pages or less is what our goal is for this book. And one of the other reasons for that is we just don't want it to be overwhelming. There might be additional content that we put out in PDF or softcover format that is like additional examples of pre-generated settlements, but that would be a huge stretch goal for us because that's a lot of additional content to create. But we think that as it stands right now, the book is already so full and such a rich resource that it's going to have everything that anybody could ever need at this point in time. But yeah, so I hope that answers the question.
We really want it to be a really excellent tool, as well as a bunch of pre-made things. One of the biggest things we're going for with this is just overall utility and kind of supporting and enabling GM creativity and helping to inspire the people who are using the book to make their own things and to get cool ideas and to not get bogged down in the nitty-gritty of the creation of these things as there can often be, and instead just be able to dive right into answering the fun questions about how this integrates with the world you're playing in and what this settlement could mean for your players. That's, I think, our main high concept goal.
Well, and building off of that, the other thing that happens too is some people might see a D6 table or a D20 table as a limiting factor. I tend to think of it as more inspiration and giving you some, it's only 6 different outcomes, but if it weren't those 6, you've got a million ideas. It could be in your head. And sometimes I find that it's hard to just pick one.
Yeah,
and
you get analysis paralysis, man.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
And so obviously what we're trying to do is not create a 1,000-page book of all the different options, but give you 6 really good options. And when you create a settlement for the first time, you really start to feel inspired, and that was the main goal. You really want to inspire people to use their creativity. And of course, if there's an option that isn't in there that you really want, use that option. But you're going to have to come up with the additional, what does that mean? In our case, the size of the settlement could have something to do with the size of the population. They might modify each other. That might be, modifications made to subsequent rolls because of the outcome of one of the rolls you make early on. Yeah. So, we've tried to really think that through and give you as many options as possible, not bog you down, inspire you. And some people might think they're only giving us 6 different options. Well, but there's 6 really good options.
Yeah, and a lot of the tables also interact with each other. So one table, if you roll on it, it'll say it gives a plus or a minus to a roll on a further table. And you have certain elements that interact in neat ways with other ones where you go, oh yeah, I could totally see how that would happen or how it makes sense.
2 easy examples are law enforcement and population wealth can have an effect on petty crime. But we also go into, when it comes to petty crime, we go into the psychology of it. Is it petty crime over greed or out of desperation? Yep. So are people, destitute? They need to steal to survive, or is it that there's so much wealth in this place that thieves just run amok and take what they can because so many of the people there are wealthy? There's other things to play into.
I find
we have more questions coming in.
Oh yeah, there's always more questions. I find products like this are just great for you as the GM. You get stuck for an idea, and you go to something like this, and it's just what you needed to break the blockage. Prue wants to know, with all this creating you're doing, do you have any opportunity to carve out time for actual gaming at all?
Well, I just got back from the convention, and holy smokes, that was 4 solid days of gaming. And I've got my fill for a little bit, and now I can get back to some creative stuff. But right now, there's a lot of outside factors for both Andrew and myself. We're both dads. I have a now 2.5, 3-month-old, and a 2-year-old. So that takes quite a lot of my free time. Totally worth it. Andrew has a 2-year-old, and
another one on the way in August.
Dad, second time in August. So I would say that it's not so much our creativity and our development of new products that limits our gaming time. It's the other life parts that is limiting our gaming time. And we both work at Nord Games like as our primary gig. So this is all we do. But of course there's a lot to be done. I act as the CEO. We have so many different moving parts, a lot of different Kickstarters that we're fulfilling, a lot of different products we're developing. And this has been a primary project for Andrew and I for the past couple months. It was first laid out a couple years ago. The little notes, like I said, I have a notebook. I keep everything in, and the seeds of this started a couple years ago, but it really didn't start picking up steam until a few months ago when Andrew got involved and saw what I had already created, and then our collaboration really took off, and we turned it into so much more than it was before the two of our heads got together. But Andrew and I have been gaming together for years, so we have a certain synergy, but we have two different perspectives on things. So it really comes together for a nice collaboration, and we're both willing to listen to each other and compromise when we both have a good idea that could be blended together, or to concede when the other one has a better idea. So I'm fully willing to accept that that's a better way of doing something, or to hold fast and believe that my method may be better. And but it's been great. I really wish we did have more time to get together and game, but like I said, life factors come into play, and family comes first always.
Yeah,
that's always. So what I'm hearing is, if you guys want to keep gaming, don't have kids.
This is funny because I saw so many friends when I was in Texas at the convention, and so many of them do have kids at certain ages, all different ages. And many times I would say, oh, so they're old enough to play D&D with you now. They get the concepts and stuff. And a lot of them are like, yeah, it's great. It's so much fun being able to play D&D with my son or daughter. And then other ones were saying, well, they're too cool for D&D as far as they're concerned. Like they're all into other things. And I'm like, oh, that's sad, because I remember doing all kinds of fun stuff with my dad. I never played D&D with my dad, but spending a lot of time with my dad doing different things, and his hobbies became my hobbies. And it would be really cool. I think it would be really, really cool to one day play D&D with a couple, my boys and a couple other friends and their kids. So I'm looking forward to that. If they're not too cool for hanging out with dad.
It's building your own party, right?
Yeah.
Good luck with that,
exactly.
Because it's a mixed bag. Like, I've got one that games and one that doesn't, and even the one that games is like in and out, depending on what's going on. He discovers things. He started doing like sports and finding girls, and D&D fades fairly fast.
Yeah, it can be distracting.
So, Cardboard Fortress, do you give guidance for the political structure, positions, and difference in non-Western cities like Middle Eastern, Indian, Mongolian, Chinese, etc., etc.?
The answer is yes, with an asterisk. So we leave it vague enough to where it is designed to work with whatever culture you're trying to, because we don't name them a czar or a jarl or a king or anything like that. Right. We try to say noble or something like so something that would be more general, so that it can be applied to multiple cultures. Side note to the cultures thing is, at the next stretch goal with the art, we're really going to try to go into inspiring you with art from non Western European cultures. So right now, all of our primary artwork is very much the typical fantasy Western European look. We're going to be going into more Middle Eastern, Asian, African, and Eastern Europe, Northern Europe. We're trying to diversify and give you examples of different cultures' clothing and their structures, because it's really the settlement. You're going to see a lot of these pieces pulled back and see a lot of the buildings, and so we're seeing right now a lot of the artwork is very much Western European. Great, looks good, awesome, Lord of the Rings looking stuff, and our typical idea of fantasy. But what we want to do is really start to spin the globe around a little bit and try to get some inspiration from our own cultures. Look at Game of Thrones and how great they've been at showing different areas of the map just in the clothing and the architecture. And so that the artwork will really start to do that for you. But as far as the builder is concerned, we leave it vague enough for you to be able to say that this is applicable to your Northern European campaign. Therefore, it's a Jarl who runs the town or the realm, and this is where they live.
That's definitely been one of the main guiding principles for us while we've been designing the book, is keeping this thing as usable as possible, regardless of what game or setting you're using. So if you were using Forgotten Realms or Dark Sun, or I don't know, maybe Spelljammer even, you could use this book and could feasibly apply it to whatever setting you're using.
So TrueMate wants to know, are there any pre-generated buildings examples in the book?
There will be in the playtest material. So there's going to be, just like each of the settlement types, there's a builder. There's a builder for each one of the building types. And so when you're talking about a blacksmith shop, obviously it's not going to have nearly as many options because there's not as many moving parts to it, but there'll be things that when you walk in, you notice. And these are done so that you as the dungeon master or the game master are trying to paint a picture for the players. And you're trying to show them, not tell them. And that's what we're trying to accomplish with that builder specifically. So the settlement builder is a broad view. The point of interest builder is going to be more and more focused. And when you walk into this shop, what do you see? I walk into the magic shop and it is very, very dark in here, and only one candle is floating on its own inexplicably in the middle of the room, sort of dancing around near the ceiling, and that's the only illumination that you have in here. The floor is dusty and it smells musty. All these different things that come into play, and it sets the tone, and it allows your players to feel and see and hear and smell and stuff. Use all those senses, and that's what we're really trying to accomplish with the building or the point of interest builder. So when you walk into that building, what are you seeing? Or you walk into that tent or whatever, what are you seeing, hearing, smelling, experiencing?
So Cristiano wants to know, will the architect tier be available for update in the backer kit? So a very Kickstarter specific question. Yeah.
Yes. So all of the pledges that are on the Kickstarter will be available to upgrade to through backer kit. And the only limiting factor is anything that doesn't have any available anymore. So if there's a pledge level that has a limit and the limit's been reached, that will not be available to upgrade to.
So I have a question for you guys. What was, for each of you, what was your favorite part about working on this project?
I'll let Andrew start.
Oh man, have him throw me in the hot seat first.
Well, the reason is because you might have the same answer as I do, and so I'll have to change my answer.
Yeah, I might. Man, that's a really good question. I think the most fun for me has been figuring out the system. I mean, I was a game design major in college. Like that's what my actual degree was in. So I cut my teeth on dissecting D&D 3.5 with my roommate over a weekend, and um, so digging into how we were going to have the builder work and how the tables would interact and what we would be able to get out of the builder at the end of it once you use it, and having something really cool and constantly unique and never boring come out of using the builder with random rolls and the creative challenge that that gives you while giving you some guidance. Because normally creating, if someone said build an interesting settlement and gave you a blank sheet of paper, a lot of times you sit there and go and start drooling. But instead, when you get a little bit more of a narrow focus and you get those results that kind of target you in a certain direction, it inspires you and has you go, okay, let's ask some interesting questions. And what that does to your brain and how it helps you conjure something that is different every time was so cool and so fun. And once we started testing it and seeing the things that we'd come up with, was like, wow, this is really something special. And I think that's been my favorite part of this, is just how inspiring and unique it really is.
Well, and I'll play off of that. The last thing you said, the last part of the process, of course, is testing it. Well, the last part of the process is revising and testing again. But last part of the beta, I would say, is okay. Now that we've established all these things and we've put out numbers that we think are going to work, let's test this thing. Like put it on the road, see if it drives. That was what was so exciting to me. And when we started rolling, because we didn't pick, we just started rolling just to say, let's just roll a bunch of dice and see if this actually functions. And there's not a point where it totally breaks the system. And we rolled and rolled and rolled and came up with more and more interesting places. And we realized we've created something quite good. And then we started giving it to other people who had nothing to do with it. And we asked them, go ahead,
give it a shot.
Yeah, let's see what you come up with. And we all were just on Hangout together, and they started rolling some dice, and we started just putting down the notes. Okay, so we got that, and then at the very end they were like, okay, so based on everything that I've rolled, I think, and then they just made up their own thing. And that one is actually going in the book, the first one that was made by someone other than the development team. And so it was simply a sort of a fact checker. And this is why we're going to have all the playtest material available. We need people to break it so that we can make sure that it can't be broken again. So we want people to try it out, make sure that they come up with interesting combinations, and never at any point is there something that's like, oh wait, this actually doesn't work. We have to change those numbers. We have to change the outcome or whatever. So that was the point where I realized, wow, we've created something quite good here. And it all started, months and months of work all started to really pay off, because until it actually is moving along, you don't know. Like if I use the car analogy again, we're building a car from the ground up, and we're getting everything going, and we're going, okay, we need to get this kind of brakes, these kind of tires, all that stuff. But until you actually start rolling down the road and hit the gas, you don't know if that's going to function, you know.
Yeah. You hope you don't miss a key nut or bolt and the thing just falls to pieces right under you.
So, did anything glaring come out in the from the feedback from the playtest that you've done so far?
I don't think there's been anything
mainly, well, we haven't put it out to that many people yet, but it's
been internal.
The feedback that we have had has been, this is quite well. It's been, yeah, I would call it internal. Other members of Nord or friends of ours who haven't had nothing to do with the development, and the feedback has been very much, this is great. This is really, really great. And you know, we're opening up to the playtesters soon so that we don't live in a vacuum. Because especially on something like this, you know, we have to get other people involved to look at it and make sure that it's not a broken system. So far, everything's looking really, really good. And if you're part of the Kickstarter, you'll get an update about the playtest material. So jump on there. Even if you want to jump on there for just $1, you'll get information about the playtest material, how to access it, and then how to give us feedback. So that'll be up. I tried to get up by the end of last week. It wasn't going to happen. There was the convention and everything. I mean, anyone who knows about the conventions, once you're there, you're stuck in. You're pretty much going to be gaming for quite a long time and socializing and stuff like that. So very little actual work got done last week, except for, of course, collaboration with, you know, some pretty important names that I'm not going to drop because we got some very cool things going on I don't want anybody to know about. So you'll hear about that in a year on Nerdarchy.
We stay in touch for sure. So Prupu has a question. I'm always amazed at the tenacity that successful creators have. What do you guys do when you hit a rough spot and just want to flake, or does this just not happen to you in a big way?
We're not flakes. So I was raised never to go back on your word. Always live up to the expectations. So when you hit a rough spot, you work through it. If we need to get more people involved, if that's the thing, you have to get more people on the situation. That's what you do. If you have to, I hate to use the expression, throw more money at it, but if for some reason we didn't charge enough for shipping and we have to fit the bill for that, that's what we do. Whatever arises, and even if it came down to this, it never happened, and I don't foresee it happening, but even if something happened where basically we were not able to fulfill, we would refund everybody. So that's obviously the last thing I would want to do, to not deliver on what people were wanting, but it is always an option, and that is the only way. If that's the only way that I can make up for the situation, that's what I will do. But we will do everything in our power to fulfill on what we promised to fulfill.
Right.
I think he's talking about more like writer's block.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Writer's block. Oh,
he means like personally.
Yeah. It was prefaced with the I think it was prefaced at the beginning with our creator. I took at that as like creating Kickstarters. Yeah. When you hit a writer's block, I often just get on and hang out with Andrew, or I talk to Chris Wolf, or talk to Ralph Stickley. You know, get someone else involved, get someone else's ideas on something, let them know where you're getting stuck, and most of the time they'll start asking you questions about what has already been established. You know, tell me more about the story, and then you go, well, but I'm at this point where now, you know, the bad guy is doing this or whatever. Let's say it's an adventure, and I just don't know where to go from here. Getting a few more people involved and being receptive to their ideas is, I think, the most important thing you can do.
Yeah, being open is really, really big.
Yeah, flexible.
I think for myself, one of my favorite podcasts, this is a bit of a plug, but the Ludology podcast. If any of you guys are into board gaming, it's fantastic. But they talk a lot about in game design. It's really easy when you've got an idea, you're pushing it, and then all of a sudden you hit a spot, a lot of times even in testing, where you hit a roadblock and you know that you've run into a problem, but you can't figure out, at least in that instant, what the best answer is to that problem. And that can happen a lot in any creative process. And they say, and I really agree with this, that one of the best things you can do is just stop for a little bit. Just move to a different project and let your brain work on it in the background. Because if you really care about the project, you're not going to forget about it. And you kind of just, work on something else and let your brain rest on that idea and come back to it fresh. Because sometimes, especially if you've been working really hard on anything, even if it's like a paper for school or something, if you've been looking at one thing for a long time, it all just blurs together, and sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees. And if you step away and come back later with, sometimes all it takes is a good night's sleep. You come back and you look at it fresh, and it's like, oh, there's the answer. It's been right there. And I was so deep in it, you can't see it. Sometimes it's just knowing when to step away, relax, and, just don't push it.
So collaboration, or taking a break and then coming back fresh.
Yep.
Both good methods.
I also find like having very varied interests away from the area where you create can be super helpful as well, because you just never know what's going to inspire you. Something your 2-year-old did, something you saw on the road, or a podcast about cars. You just never know.
Yeah, fully.
So I saw some other questions in there. There's a question about international shipping and Kickstarters and availability after the Kickstarter.
We're working on international stuff.
Yeah, so we've been given some leads. We've never been able to find a reputable, and it's not because they don't exist. It's just because we don't have their contact information yet. But we've never been able to find a reputable EU distribution warehouse. Here's the factor that comes into play. We're going to send them a pallet of books. A, the shipping costs to do that. B, they've got tens of thousands of dollars of our product in their warehouse. If they, for some reason, disappear or decide to just take it, you know what I mean? Like, we could be losing out on lots and lots of money. That represents a lot of money for our company. So there's a huge risk for us. So we do have the names and numbers for a few places. We've reached out to them. And if in fact we do make a deal before the end of the Kickstarter, obviously we'll update the FAQ section. If it's made after the Kickstarter but before BackerKit goes out, we will of course change the amount of shipping for those areas. The logistics involved mean that we would send some of our product to our fulfillment warehouse in South San Francisco, and we would send the rest to, or whatever needs to go, to Europe. Then it would fulfill from the South San Francisco to domestic and probably Canada, and then it would fulfill to EU and UK. UK is not in the EU anymore, but that general area, Europe, from the EU warehouse. So understand there's some moving parts involved, and other times the issue we run into is they want to charge about $20 to $25 handling fee per package. Well, if it's going to be $10 to $15 for shipping within the EU for the book, and they're going to charge us $20 to $25 for a handling fee, that's going to be about, if not more, than it costs for us $35 to just send from our location. And of course, when I say $35, my quote from the USPS was 36 something. And I just put it at $35. So we're already losing over $1 each time that we're charging only $35. And we're also not taking into consideration the packaging materials. So we're losing probably a couple bucks on those. So anybody who looks at our EU shipping or international shipping and goes, well, they're just trying to squeeze more money out of us. No, we're actually losing money on every single one of those. And I'll tell you what, other publishers who I won't mention, who I talked to over the weekend, who are friends of ours, they end up in the same situation. They lose tens of thousands of dollars on shipping every single Kickstarter, depending on how many people they have backing their project. And most of it we lose from international, because all we can do is try to estimate, and so many times it comes out to be more.
It's not cheap. I mean, even for us, like just shipping out, giveaways, because we pretty much, we honor winners from all over the world. And it's the same thing. It's like when we hit the random button, it's like US, no. So it's tough.
And there was a couple of questions I just saw about, I know we're coming up on the hour, but there was a couple of questions I just saw about, have we thought about using Amazon to sell our products? Have we thought about using Amazon for fulfillment? We've looked into Amazon. We don't want to work with Amazon to sell our products because I believe personally that Amazon is a local game store killer. And I think that they are very, very good at what they do, making it very hard for brick and mortar stores to stay in business. Not because that was their intention. Amazon, I don't think, went into business thinking we're going to put every physical location out of business on purpose. I think it became a factor of convenience. I've watched people come into our local game store, look at a product on the shelf. It's a brand new board game. They go, oh, cool, this looks cool. Looking at the back of it. Okay, whip out their phone and go, I can get it for 35% off, 40% off on Amazon. I'm going to order it there. It'll be here in 2 days. Click, walk out of the store. And the owner of the store is just like...
But it does suck for the game store owner. So having our stuff primarily be either straight through us, or we have game stores that are customers of ours who order our product and have it on their shelf. So if you want to get our stuff, you're either coming to us or you're supporting your friendly local gaming store, which we also love and are happy with.
But we understand that some people don't have a local game store. Yeah. They live in an area where there just aren't any game stores. And so come to our website and buy it from our website. We very much try to support the local game stores whenever we can. And we have a lot of them that buy directly from us, and we're looking at getting into distribution. So, that's a whole other process in and of itself. But the point is, we don't want to work with Amazon if it means putting the local game stores in a bad position. Someone walks into their store, sees our thing on the shelf for $40, let's say, for a book, and they go, well, I can buy it from Amazon for $20. That I don't feel good about that at all.
Yeah, there's even more to it than that I don't think we have time to get into, because we are up on the hour, and I am in crunch time because I'm going to a con this week. I'll be in Origins.
Oh man,
yeah. So, which con?
Origins.
Oh, I wanted to go.
Yeah. So I actually have a ride coming to come take me to get the rental car.
Yeah. So Andrew, the good news about that is it's on the schedule for 2019. So you and I are probably going to that.
Yes. So we getting. Gen
I'm sorry we can't get. Gen Con is on the schedule, but we'll see. No guarantees yet. I appreciate all the questions. If you have any questions that didn't get addressed in this video, please go to our Kickstarter and post a comment, and we can get to it that way. You'll have to back the project for at least $1 to be able to post comments, I believe. But that's where I'll end it.
Yeah, and congratulations, guys, both on the babies and the Kickstarter, and
thank you.
Thanks for hanging out today.
Thank you very much. It was great meeting you, Dave, and thank you for having us. To everyone in the chat, thank you guys for hanging out and participating. It was so much fun. This is so cool.
And thanks
I love
everyone
the
to the chat. So until next time, guys, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.